A very good morning to you. Welcome to AM Live this Friday. As is our custom, the youth perspective this morning, and they're commenting on the Kenya we want. Actually, they will be making presentations. Already, I have three panelists in studio with me. We'll get to them in a moment. But before then, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Olive Barrows, and these are the stories making headlines. The news that the price of a 2-kilogram packet of maize flour has been cut by more than half may have the full support of a majority of Kenyans, but it is also being met with a bit of skepticism in other quarters. Some analysts say this move by government is meant to influence Kenyans to vote in a certain manner, especially because this is not the first time the country has experienced a maize flour crisis around the election period. NTV's Martin Mwangi reports on the Unga politics.
Wednesday's move by the government to bring down the cost of maize flour from 205 shillings to 100 shillings for a 2-kilogram packet may have come as a relief for Kenyans, with several flocking the shelves and shops to grab the commodity that is used to prepare Kenya's staple meal, ugali. But not everyone is convinced this move has been made solely in the interest of the citizen. For Professor Gitile Naituli, for instance, this doesn't quite sit well. Subsidizing the cost of maize flour for 4 weeks, which covers the period just before the general election and right after, in his view, is meant to lower the voting patterns of Kenyans.
What Uhuru Kenyatta did yesterday, when he was announcing subsidy on maize, amounts to an individual who rearranges furniture in a house which is already on fire. What will happen is in both the furniture and yourself will still be banned.
It is a gimmick to win the hearts of or the votes. Let's just talk. They want to win votes. They want to look like they are a caring government. And I think if they were a caring government, that these are things that they should have forecasted way ahead of time.
This is not the first time Kenyans have found it difficult to place ugali on their tables during an election period, something the president acknowledged while announcing the reduction of prices.
Indeed, every election in our country has attracted an Unga crisis. And in fact, at times it seems to be engineered, a connection between Unga and its high price and elections.
In May 2017, 3 months before the general election, a shortage of maize in the country led to the price of maize meal rising to 160 shillings. The government at the time, also led by President Uhuru Kenyatta, announced a 6 billion shillings subsidy on maize imports, a move that would bring down the cost of flour to 90 shillings. The government was also forced to announce that it would be importing about 100,000 tons of maize from Zambia. However, the subsidized flour was in short supply, which resulted to some retailers selling for more than the recommended price.
Unga is affordable again to the ordinary Kenyan, and no matter the amount of debate or the amount of inquisition, there is likely nothing that can be done to change that fact that 2 kilograms of unga cost 90 shillings.
Experts say that the unga crisis and the general high cost of living is as a result of self-centered leaders whose main goal is not to feed Kenyans, but to fill their own stomachs.
For the 10 years, we didn't have a parliament. In fact, if I can advise the people of Kenya, nobody, no member of the current parliament should go back. They should vote all of them out.
The general election, now 3 weeks away, will come and go. A new leadership will take over and have to handle the simmering pressure to sustain the lowered price of maize meal, whose subsidy will have expired in 4 weeks. Martin Mwangi, NTV.
As many citizens celebrate the lowering of the price of maize meal by the government, retailers affiliated to the Retail Trade Association of Kenya are staring at losses that could run into the tens of millions. The retailers first want a reimbursement of 175 million shillings that had been paid to suppliers before the downward review of prices before they can adjust the prices at the shelf. Kenyans have, however, assured that by have, however, been assured that by today, all maize meal brands on the shelves will retail at 100 shillings as directed by the president. Helen Aura with more.
Hours after this directive by President Uhuru Kenyatta, many trooped to the shelves to find the preferred staple to have something to put on the table for their families. The desperation says it all as they scramble to ensure that they did not miss out, forcing the managers to put a limit of 4 packets per person.
Tunaomba pia in the next government watushukishie economy. Yeah, life iko hard. Wakenya wanaumia.
Nimefurahia sana kwa kupata unga imeshuka. By the way, familia leo itakaa imekaa chonjo.
Mimi nashukuru vile hiyo unga iliteremshwa chini. Sitaki watu waingize siasa. Wale wanaigiza siasa hawajui jani nini.
Some brands have already adjusted the prices in line with the directive, but a spot check earlier today revealed that some brands were still costing over 200 shillings for a 2-kilogram packet of maize flour.
If a miller has not told me that the price needs to be shifted down, then automatically, and I'm also on the other side, the government is saying no brand should be selling above 100. It's immediate, so that means I'll have to take them off. All the brands that are going to be on the shelf tomorrow are going to be at 100 or less.
The Retail Trade Association of Kenya, RITRAC, is however not too quick to review the prices, much as they have indicated they will comply. They are fast counting the cost of such a review and asking for compensation for the commodity they had already paid suppliers beforehand. Through a statement, and I quote, "While the new price tags are fixed, our analysis indicates that as the close of business on July 2022, retailers affiliated with RITRAC were holding unsold stocks amounting to more than 750 tons. Consequently, we have commenced engagements with the respective maize mill suppliers to recover more than 175 million, which is a cumulative estimate of higher price earlier paid to them to facilitate deliveries." The increased cost of living continues to push Kenyans to the wall. And with just 19 days to the general elections, Kenyans remain hopeful that the reduced cost in maize flour will remain even with the incoming government. On the other hand, Kenyans want the government to be more accountable. Helen Aura, NTV.
All right, away from matters Unga, Deputy President William Ruto will now attend the presidential debate slated for Tuesday next week, although his team has given a set of conditions that they want addressed before the showdown. Now, according to the head of communications at Ruto's presidential campaign team, and that is the head of that communication campaign team, Hussein Mohammed, the organizers of the debate must now make public the time allocated for each topic of the discussion to avoid spending excess time in discussing what they described as non-issues. This even as the Presidential Debate Secretariat announced the moderators of the ultimate debate. Ibrahim Karaja with more. Those numbers you saw on your screen were from the latest InfoTrack poll and made reference to the popularity of the two leading presidential contenders at the coast. In Mombasa, Raila Odinga is 59%. Has a popularity rating of 59%, William Ruto 25%. In Kwale, Raila Odinga 51%, William Ruto 25%. In Kilifi, Raila Odinga 45%, William Ruto 27%. In Lamu, Raila Odinga 47%, William Ruto 34%. In Taita Taveta, Raila Odinga 58%, William Ruto 42%. And in Tana River, Raila Odinga is at 23%, William Ruto at 41%. So overall looks like, apart from Tana River, that Raila Odinga is leading in popularity at the coast. All right, and now let's take a look at the Azimio campaigns. And the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party presidential candidate Raila Odinga yesterday took his campaigns to counties in the North Rift, where his political competitors claim as a stronghold. Raila urged voters in the Baringo, Elgeyo Marakwet, and West Pokot counties to support his bid, affirming Azimio's commitment to make education free and to give an opportunity to all Kenyans, as well as, to give an opportunity to all Kenyans and fight graft. But even as he made his pitch, Raila found himself having to intervene as local politics threatened to steal the show as a couple of local leaders berated each other. Odinga's running mate, Martha Karua, on the other hand, pitched camp in Nyeri County, where the competitors are seeking to win more votes to the Kenya Kwanza side.
Mwezi ujao ni tofauti na uchaguzi zingine. Hii sio 2017, hii si 2013, hii si 2007. Hii ni kama uchaguzi wa 1963 na 2003. Tumeelewana vizuri? Ile ya 93 ilimaliza ukoloni, ikaleta uhuru. Sawa? 2002 ilimaliza utawala wa chama kimoja, ikaleta katiba mpya. Sawa? Ambayo ilileta ugatuzi, sivyo? Hii sasa ambayo tunaelekea sasa ni ya ukombozi wa tatu. Ukombozi wa kiuchumi. Ni ya vijana na kina mama. Vijana mko tayari?
The Kenya Kwanza Brigade, led by Deputy President William Ruto, yesterday pitched camp in the counties of Lamu, Tana River and Kilifi, rallying the coast to support their race to State House. Ruto slammed his opponents for castigating him over a 2,500-acre piece of land he allegedly owns in Taita Taveta, accusing them of defrauding the people of the region's thousands of acres of land. He challenged the Azimio One Kenya leadership to explain to Kenyans how they acquired their properties, stating that they're engaging in politics of doublespeak. Yet some of them are allegedly behind the problems surrounding land injustice at the coast. The leaders also vowed to address the cost of living in the country, blaming the handshake for halting the Big Four agenda that would have resolved the food insecurity in the country. Elsewhere, ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi, who led campaigns in the capital, expressed confidence of winning the August polls, asking their opponents to accept the outcome of the elections.
We know your scheme. You want to hide the 100,000 acres you have, which you never bought from anybody. You want to hide it behind some small scheme about 2,000 acres. We are telling you, we are calling you out. Please, before you give us long stories, writing letters left, right, and center about 2,000 acres, please tell us about the 100,000 acres you have.
Wao wenyewe ndio wamechukua mashamba makubwa na hawatatuambia mashamba walinunulia nani, shilingi ngapi, siku gani, na lazima watueleze.
Watuletee hiyo sales agreement, watuletee hizo risiti za hiyo mashamba walinyakua kwa wananchi, tujue hiyo mashamba walipewa na nani. Sisi si wajinga.
Jamaa wa kitendawili ati anasema ati ameongea na rais ati ili rais apunguze gharama ya unga. Sasa namuuliza bwana kitendawili, wewe umekuwa ukifanya kazi kwa handshake na rais miaka 5. Ni wiki iliyopita ndio ulijua bei ya unga imefika shilingi 230? Kwani ulikuwa unafanya nini miaka hii yote?
Hata mkaleta unga wa bure, wembe ni ule. Tarehe 9 mwezi wa 8, the 5th President of the Republic of Kenya is none other than William Samoei Ruto.
All right, back to that report on Deputy President William Ruto expressing his willingness to participate in the presidential debate, but with terms and conditions. He now says that is his campaign secretariat says he will participate in the debate, but according to his head of communication, and that is Hussein Mohammed, The organizers of the debate must now make public the time allocated for each topic of discussion to avoid spending excess time in discussing what they describe as non-issues. This even as the Presidential Debate Secretariat announced the moderators of the ultimate debate. Here now is Ibrahim Karanja's report.
With continued concerns on whether Deputy President William Ruto would attend the presidential debate scheduled for the evening of Tuesday, 26th of July 2022, the head of communications at his campaign secretariat, Hussein Mohammed, has put the matter to rest.
The Deputy President and our candidate is attending the debate, but
Mohammed has, however, called on the organizers of the debate to make public the time allocated for discussing each topic of discussion, their position seemingly informed by the debate for deputy presidential candidates Rigathi Gachagua and Martha Karua early in the week, in which they say too much time was spent on what they consider as non-issues.
it is sad that after 1.5 hours of a debate being watched by millions in Kenya and across the world, nobody even had a proposal about what they're going to do about healthcare or manufacturing or all those other important issues. So this is why we're saying they must make public.
The position of Kenya Kwanza comes on the backdrop of complaints against what they allege is media bias and unfair coverage that even led to an advisory to their candidates against attending. But basing on how the previous two debates have been conducted, candidates participating have been given guidelines on the debate, including general topic of discussions and the time allocated. Meanwhile, the Presidential Debate Secretariat unveiled the moderators of the showdown. In the first debate, pitting candidates who have scored less than 5% in 3 recent opinion polls, being the Roots Party's Professor George Wajakoya and David Mwaure Waihiga of the Agano Party, NTV's senior editor Smriti Vidyarthi and KTN News Ken Mijungu will moderate the debate. Citizen TV's Yvonne Okwara and Eric Latif of KTN News will moderate the second debate of the night, pitting candidates who've garnered more than 5% in the 3 recent polls, in this case Azimio's Raila Odinga and UDA's William Ruto. Nation Media Group's editorial director, broadcast Joe Ageo, will moderate panel discussions for both debates. Ibrahim Karanja, NTV.
The tussle over the Nyayo National Stadium as a venue for the last campaign for both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance is intensifying. NTV has learned that the Kenya Kwanza Alliance will not be granted access to the Nyayo Stadium and additionally the Moi International Sports Center Kasarani, owing to peace concerts that apparently had been pre-booked. The United Democratic Alliance has termed this move by the stadium management as mischief orchestrated by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya to deny them access to what they claim had already been paid for and received approval for. Sydney Chazima reports on the showdown over the stadium.
The campaign period pitting the two main rival camps, Kenya Kwanza and Azimio One Kenya, has been a tight one, with the two camps going head-to-head to claim the venue for their final campaign pitch to the electorate. But they may both have to find alternative grounds, as there seems to be another function that has been slated for the same venue. The contents of the letter by Director General of Sports Kenya, Pius Meto, addressed to the United Democratic Alliance Secretary General Veronica Maina, could put the party's plans for the venue in disarray. The letter states, and I quote, that with regret, both facilities, that is Moi International Sports Center Kasarani and Nyayo National Stadium, will not be available on the 5th and 7th of August 2022 due to peace concerts scheduled to take place at the two venues. NTV has learned that a top entertainment industry mogul had allegedly booked the two venues for the peace concert, and coincidentally, the Azimio campaign team through its secretary Junet Mohammed in a statement on 19th of July stated that Azimio had also booked Nyayo Stadium as the venue for their last official campaign rally on the 6th of August. But the top brass at the UDA party reads mischief in this.
Is this issue of that they have booked for peace meetings, it's a big lie. It's a very big lie by Azimio. So I think what we can only tell them, let's not fight for a venue. You let those ones who got there first do the venue. Yourself focus elsewhere. Kenya is big.
Consequently, the UDA party, having provided a list of documents as proof of payment made for the venue and further engagements with the stadium management, has written to Pius Meto through Adrian Kamotho and company advocates seeking answers over the standoff and threatening further legal action should they not receive a response by 2 p.m. on 21st July. That deadline has expired.
We are prepared to challenge the Ministry of Sports legally on that because we have a signed contract. The contract hasn't been cancelled. We want Azimio to show proof of when they booked the stadium because they don't have that proof.
ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna hinted that the Nyayo National Stadium had already been booked by Junet Mohammed and that any further details on the same should be communicated by him. Director General of Sports Kenya Pius Meto, speaking to NTV, stated that he could not comment on the issue, but rather chose to ask the two parties to give factual information to their members with regards to the current standoff. Azimio Secretary Junet Mohammed has yet to respond to our query on this, but the United Democratic Alliance says its plans are still on course.
At that time when we were booking this, there was no other political party that had done a booking. There was no other institution or organization that had done a booking for Nyayo Stadium. So preparatory work for the invitees is going on for this particular last rally.
Sydney Chazima, NTV.
All right, let's take a look at the events we're looking forward to and that perhaps will be making headlines tomorrow. All right, Willie Kimani murder case judgment that one will be delivered today. As far as the campaign trail is concerned, Karua is meeting youth in Nairobi. And we have a status update from the Agriculture Cabinet Secretary, Peter Munya, on Unga. And you've already heard those arguments that why now, both the president asking why the price escalates around the elections and the deputy president saying why has it been reduced now and not earlier. And Muchembai has a briefing on election security preparedness. Let's take a look at today's headlines. And top on the Daily Nation, Venezuelan with election stickers held at airport. Detectives were last evening investigating 3 men, among them a Venezuelan who flew into the country at midday from London carrying 16 rolls of election-related stickers in their luggage, even as the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission claimed all was well. We'll get into that on page 4. On the bottom here of the front page of the Daily Nation, Ruto Raila caught up in a zero-sum game as the two front-runners go for each other's jugular and threaten to investigate and jail each other. Should they win this election, a dark cloud hangs over the first days of the post-Kenyatta future. Just 17 days to go to the August 9th elections. Both are promising populist moves to cut the prices of basic commodities, reduce the cost of credit, and dish out interest-free loans to the youth and small enterprises. All sounds hunky-dory until one checks those promises against the recovery framework laid out by the International Monetary Fund. Why the future is grim for whoever succeeds Kenyatta, that is on page 7, and the futility of this zero-sum game on page 14. I can see here they've highlighted the cost of energy. The International Monetary Fund has blocked Kenya from further cuts on electricity prices, citing a potential collapse of Kenya Power. Higher taxes. Treasury is seeking to set the minimum VAT rate at 12%. Pointing to an increase in taxes on goods such as fuel and cooking gas. And end of fuel subsidies. The IMF wants subsidy interventions stopped to ease pressure on the country's thinned resource envelope. And let's take a look at what is on the other pages. On page 2, Rishi Sunak making of another Obama in UK. Who is in the race to succeed outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson? That is on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation. Some good news here. Kenyan writer wins Kane Prize. Aiza Luhumio bags Continental honors for her short story 5 Years next Sunday, beating a record 267 entries. A picture of her here, and congratulations, Aiza. On page 4, I believe we come to that report on the IEBC. Yes, here it is. Venezuelan found with IEBC stickers detained at airport. The man who had just landed from the United Kingdom was found with materials in his bag. That report by Vincent Achuka. There was a statement released by the IEBC, if I could just capture their sentiments. They say that this brazen decision of the security authorities to arrest, detain, and confine in a solitary hideout the 3 personnel without jurisdiction is an exhibition of intimidation on hardworking persons who are keen to deliver a robust technology infrastructure for conduct of a credible, secure, and verifiable election. The Commission wishes to inform the public that the arrest and continued holding of the personnel has the inevitable effect of hampering the deployment of technology in the forthcoming general election. Technology plays a central role in elections, and the Commission wonders what the intention behind the holding of the technical personnel is meant to achieve. The Commission is concerned about this unjustified intimidation, harassment, and blackmail whatsoever, and demands the immediate release of the 3 employees of Smartmatic International BV. Now, they say, or rather the report is that they were arrested and the persons, according to the IBC, responsible for the deployment and management of election technology infrastructure. According to the IBC, there were personnel of Smartmatic International BV. And despite the Commission Secretary and CEO explaining to the security authorities that the 3 personnel were in the country to execute a lawful contract relating to the deployment of technology in elections, they were still detained. All right, we'll get into that in a little bit. And now here, let me just minimize the screen. Ruto on Uhuru's unga price drop. It's too little, too late. He says move is a ploy to entice Kenyans to vote for Raila in next month's elections. 4.1 million Kenyans. An arid lands battle, food shortage. That is according to the IMF. Lenders says many struggling to put food on the table due to worsening climatic conditions. 20 billion. National Treasury allocated this amount to emergency drought and security intervention in the supplementary budget for 2021-2022 financial year. IMF's bitter pill for Uhuru's successor. What conditions mean for you? It has approved, that is, IMF has approved an additional 28 billion lending to Kenya, but with a raft of unpopular demands. Gachagua fights to reclaim 1.5 billion land near airport. He has sued a retired civil servant, John Ohas, over a parcel of land near JKIA. And here is a picture of the Madira Member of Parliament, Rigathi Gachagua, who says the land is currently charged at Equity Bank over a loan of 200 million shillings. Gachagua says he bought the land for 24 million from a Mr. Peter Nduati and Ms. Pauline Muringe, who owned it through Karindi Farm Limited. All right, drive to promote tourism in East Africa launched, and here we go. The presidential debate slated for July the 26th, Tuesday, July the 26th, 2022, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. And we saw there in that report by Ibrahim Karanja that the deputy president has said he will participate, but with some conditions. And I think we'll leave the Daily Nation at that point. I will be engaging my panelists on what the reduction in unga means, those IMF conditions in the cost of unga, I mean. Zero-sum game, Ruto and Raila now go for each other's jugular. Kenya Kwanza and Azimio have threatened to investigate or jail opponents if elected in the August 9th polls. New poll shows close gubernatorial races. I can see here by popularity in Mombasa, ODM's Abdul Swamad Ali leads pack with popularity rating of 50%. That is on page 15 of the Daily Nation. Obado's PA claimed Sharon was his lover. Witness says Oyamo also said he was the father of Sharon's unborn child. That in the Daily Nation as well. Now let's take a look at the front page of the Standard. And it's a report on that the same report that Sydney Chizima did on Stadia and the race for where to hold said last campaign rallies. Locked out in venues battle. The battle for prime rally venues in Nairobi took a twist yesterday after DP William Ruto's team was informed that Nyayo Stadium, which it had booked and paid for, would not be available, and neither would Kasarani. This even as Junet Mohammed insisted Azimio would hold its final campaign call at Nyayo Stadium. And I can see down here, General Kibochi, first CDF to graduate with PhD. Ballot chances dim further for Ruben Kigame. And at the top here, so who kills Willie Kimani? The court decides, as we mentioned in the news diary, that judgment being delivered today. Front page of the Business Daily, Kenya disowns port deal. Promises made to Dubai. DP World says Kenya promised a tender notice in July. Treasury denies talk of call for bids to run local ports. You will recall that Kenya Kwanza claimed to have blown the whistle on this port deal, saying a sovereign entity was being put in the hands of a foreign entity. Okay, that is on the front page of the Business Daily. Front page of the Star. Gachagua embroiled in a 1.5 billion shilling city property row, says official fraudulently changed land ownership details. I think I mentioned that is in the Daily Nation as well. And pictures here of Kenyans scrambling at retailers to purchase unga after the price dropped from about 220 shillings to 100 shillings thereabouts. Tight spot, polling stations with no network in 34 counties. And Ruto team mulls court action in Nyayo standoff. That is all on the front page of the Star. And finally, I think let's wind up with Taifa Leo. And the headline here is Uhuru Atandikia Raila Mkeka, I beg your pardon. And bei ya unga ya shuka. I see soko la miraa lafunguliwa, majaji wa rufaa kuteuliwa bila kusita, ruzuku ya bei ya mafuta, and afanya kampeni mtaani. Basically, I understand it to mean that Uhuru Kenyatta has rolled out the red carpet for Raila Odinga by improving the economic conditions ahead of the general election. Ulinisaliti, Ruto sasa ambia rais, asema livunja hadi kumunga mkono katika uchaguzi mkuu, and afueni bei ya unga ikiteremka. All right, I think we'll leave the newspaper review there and take a break. When we come back, I engage my panelists on the Kenya we want, going off of what we've just reviewed on the papers.
The Capital Markets Authority is the regulator responsible for supervising, licensing and monitoring the activities of market intermediaries. This includes the Securities Exchange, the Central Depository and Settlement Corporation and all the other persons licensed under the Capital Markets Act. CMA works with intermediaries and stakeholders to create a conducive environment for raising the level of investor awareness by focusing on the importance of knowledge, saving attitude and the best practices for investment in the capital markets.
With as little as 2,000 shillings, with as little as 10,000 shillings, you can become an owner of a publicly listed company, and you can earn dividends at the end of the year if they decide to issue dividends.
CMA collaborates with strategic partners to provide accurate information on all aspects within the capital markets, including regulations which facilitates investors with safe investment opportunities.
Capital markets are open to everybody. They accommodate you in the position you are in. Capital markets is very highly regulated. The issue of safety, ensuring you are dealing with parties who are regulated.
In line with one of its key strategies, CMA continues to support various capital rising products such as real estate investment trusts, bonds, as well as the various listing platforms, with emphasis on how investors and shareholders of listed companies are protected.
I'm able to monitor and know the safety of my money. And the third thing is that to know that I can always get my investment when I need that money.
To get Wewe Peke by Bire the Vocalist, dial star 812 star 802 hash. Skiza na Nation.
God is always engaged in our affairs. He's engaged in your life. He's engaged in the life of our community. He's engaged in the life of our church. He's engaged in the life of our nation.
Sakaja ni jina lako halisi.
Nafikiri mlialika Sakaja. Jina lako ni Zubeida.
Now well, on this one I will stand with Zubeida Mazi. Ini Nairobi unaweza fikiri unajua mtu kumbe umjui. I think Zubeida aliuliza swali ya mtaani. Buda ni wewe. Ni kama kupatana na pasta wenu kwa club. Ama uingie heaven ukutane na Huda.
To summarize what you have said, debt is here to stay. So in short, debt is oxygen.
Not really oxygen. Money is next to oxygen.
Can you live without debt?
Yes,
totally debt free.
Yes, you can.
The Wicked Edition, in association with Nokia T20.
We shall legalize weed.
Professor George Luchiri Wajakoya of the Roots Party.
Semeni Babakea. Babakea.
Raila Amolo Odinga of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Party.
Unajua mimi sina pesa ya serikali ama ya kashfa.
David Mwaure Wahiga of the Agano Party. And
tunasema kazi ni nini?
William Samoei Ruto of the Kenya Kwanza Alliance. Presidential Debate 2022. Do not adjust your sets.
Life is for the living. Make sure you live it well. Life is for the living and making sure that those who we love will be well taken care of.
Welcome back. As the screen indicated today, this morning, platform for the young people. I'm joined by several new faces, at least for me, and some more familiar, including Sylvia Katua, who is a program officer at Mzalendo Trust, Sylvia Morwabe, who is a program manager at Crime Sipwa, Samuel Masaki, correct? Who is the Youth for Kenya Kwanza presidential campaign coordinator. Yes. And we're also joined by Steve Ogutu. Steve, you're a communication and development specialist. Karibuni sana. So just get your thoughts on this latest development as far as the arrest of who the IEBC says are 3 election officials. The authorities are not so convinced, given they were found in possession of election stickers, according to the front page of the Daily Nation. I'll start with you, Steve. What do you make of this development?
Right. So, Olive, thank you very much for having me this morning on this great show. And to say that, you know, we are in a very sensitive period as a country. And, you know, IEBC is in the limelight right now. And the role that they are playing in this election, no doubt, is very key. And depending on how they handle things, I mean, we have seen how certain actions by IEBC, the consequences of certain actions by IEBC in the past. And my hope is that the person who was arrested at the airport, that there's really nothing fishy going on. Of course, based on the IEBC reports, let's trust that what the IEBC is saying is true, and that investigations will be conducted, and we'll get to know, you know, what the motive really was in all this.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you make of the events, Samuel?
Thank you so much first for hosting me. I think it's something that we really need to think of as a country, and this is actually degenerating as a country, because the IBC made communication through the CEO to the official at the airport that they were expecting these visitors, and these are people who actually are going to be part and parcel of this process of the transmission of election results from where they are being tallied up to the national level. So I think it is clearly that we need to rethink ourselves and offer the support that the IBC need as a country. And just to say that as a country, we are actually moving, or we are headed in a wrong direction, as per se, because if you see in some of these failed African states, whereby everything has to be designed around an individual called the president, okay? And this thing of trying to intimidate the IEBC to go or to move in one direction is going to pull this country into a very wrong direction. So it is important that those officials who are arrested and who are part of this procurement process, actually the procurement officials for the company that procured the KIMS kit, they should actually be released, and they let these people, the IEBC has the mandate in the constitution to perform this obligation. So let them be allowed in the country, and so that we can be able to have a proper transition and proper electioneering period, because we trust in the process of IEBC.
Okay.
Yes.
These gentlemen, Sylvia M and Sylvia K, seem to be on the same page as far as this. They're saying leave IEBC to conduct its business. Sylvia M, do you consider this as intimidation?
First of all, thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. For just looking at what is happening, what I'm reading into it mostly is when we get into election, we have seen before that I'm hoping that this is not just an idea of maybe spreading fear, that because we've always had the narrative that elections are stolen. So maybe it's something to be able to propagate that, and I'm hoping that that is not the case. What maybe I would now call for is let's have an open mind. Let's not come into it as if we're already blaming one side or trying to protect the other, but let the investigation be free and fair, so that we can be able to know, is it really the just procurement material that was being brought out, or is it a ploy to be able to just steal the elections, as we call it here in this country?
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I can't say that it's a fight against IEBC. I can't say that for sure, but I can be able to maybe just say, let's watch, let's see, let's let the investigation take its course, and let's not use it to create fear in the rest of Kenyans that whatever it is, because now that will create doubt whether they were free and fair just because of what has happened right now.
Okay, so you're saying let the investigations take their course.
Yes.
All right, Sylvia K.
Hi, Olive. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me once again. I think IBC's issue out of all this is public communication, poor public communication. And this is something that I've said before. Because we've had issues with IBC's procurement before, not issues with the procurement, but with how they're communicating it and the timelines. And if you actually read the story, you'll notice that the airport officials are saying that they were not informed by IBC that these materials would be coming, and they're actually questioning why this would be coming through a personal, in a personal capacity, as opposed to coming through sealed boxes. That is the question. And instead of IBC coming out clearly and saying, okay, 1, 2, 3, they released a statement, we've seen it, but it's very vague. It's not adequate enough to answer all the questions that Kenyans have. And this is something that we've seen before. And as civil society, we have repeatedly called out IBC for its lack of, I wouldn't say transparency, but the kind of communication that it's consistently putting out is not strong. It's not addressing all the issues being raised, not only even about procurement, but even if you think about the polling stations you've spoken about, up in the 32 counties that have issues, in the counties, I don't know how many they are, but have issues with the coverage. If you recall in the last...
I think I saw on the star says 34.
Yes, 34. And in the last election, okay, I think there are about 11,000 polling stations, 11,000.
1111.
Yes. So you can imagine those kind of polling stations increased. First of all, polling stations were increased, if you recall. IBC released, and it was after public outcry that they came ahead and gave why and how many polling stations in each county were increased. Secondly, this issue of 4G coverage has still not been sufficiently covered. There were regulations brought forward in Parliament, but I think Parliament shut them down. And so this is a consistent issue that was in the previous election and has not yet been addressed in this election. I think it's for IBC to have proper public channels to address the public, because if you do not allay public fears, then these issues that keep cropping up, as my colleagues have mentioned, will continue being questioned, will continue being raised. And then again, that goes back to the lack of public confidence in IBC. And if IBC officials come forward and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, if you even look at the kind of questions that are asked to the IBC commissioners and even the officials generally by the press and how they're answered, there's not that confidence that they're giving the people. They're not assuaging public fears, if I can say that. And this is something that IBC needs to work. We have about 18 days to the elections. We still don't know what's going on. When we wake up and find such a headline, it's concerning. I mean, this is something that they need to take into consideration and work on their public communication. So I think for me, the main issue is communication.
All right. So Sylvia Katua says it's not good enough to say, take us at our word, gentlemen. She says they need to really pull up their socks in engendering public confidence by way of the nature of their public communication. Maybe. Okay, so a lot of election promises have been made. Raila Odinga the other day on the campaign trail said, from next year, kwanzia mwaka ujao, nursery, bure, primary, bure, tertiary, bure, university, bure, no fees, rather, perhaps uniform and books mtanunua. But he says no fees. Ruto has made a number of pledges. Samuel can testify. Ametuambia 50 billion Hustler Fund, 100 billion to generate employment activities such as manufacturing, value addition, housing. The list is on. He says this financial year. As they're promising all this, yesterday on the Taifa Leo, they said, hold up, IMF has set certain restrictions. Same thing, I think we read on the Daily Nation. And here, cost of energy, the IMF says IMF has blocked Kenya from further cuts on electricity. Higher taxes, Treasury is seeking to set the minimum VAT rate at 12%, pointing to an increase in taxes on goods such as fuel and cooking gas. End of fuel subsidies. The IMF wants subsidy intervention stopped to ease pressure on the country's thinned resource envelope. So before I allow my panelists to make their presentations on the Kenya we want, what do you make of these two apparently polarized, different scenarios? Because on one hand, we are being promised, the land of milk and honey. On the other hand, IMF is tightening the purse strings. Steve?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for a long time, and this is not just a Kenyan problem, it's an African problem. We have leaders who decide to use the populist approach to things to get into office, and we're in that season again of promises, like you said. Okay, we'll do this, we'll do this and that, and some of these things are just to woo Kenyans to vote for them. But here is what I've always advocated for. I think we need to get to a point where, as a country, we designing policies that are evidence-based. You know, when we when we decide to come up with projects, say on roads, social development projects for our people, they need to be evidence-based as opposed to just using the populist approach. And I agree with the IMF, because what this does is it becomes very unsustainable. IMF is going to grant us the loans like they have done recently. I saw there was it a 28 billion loan last week, and they are demanding for accountability. They need to know that, you know, even as you strive to pay back this loan, that it doesn't hurt the economy of Kenya, because that is again something that as a development partner they are concerned with. And so I think it's really important that as political leaders or whatever regime that's going to be coming, that they focus on development that are evidence-based, you know, policies that are evidence-based, in order to address some of these challenges that, you know, Kenyans are grappling with, of cost of living and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Samuel, for your boss, for instance, your party leader, is he promising us utopia?
No, I think we should be able to ask ourselves some of these questions. Where we are today, it is because of the issues that the past 5 years were neglected. We had a plan in 2017. We moved away from those plans. We messed the country, and we ended up into fighting on things that are not going to put food on the table for Kenyans. We had the issues of food security. We were talking about manufacturing. We were talking about issues of employment. Today, those things are not being considered. It's because we deviated as a country and as a government from those priorities. If today we would have focused on agriculture, and you know today, agriculture, 50% of food that you put on the table in-house is based on expenditures of food. If we can be able to have factored ourselves in as much as on food security, then we could be able not to have the issues of the challenge that we're having today of hunger. That is the problem that as we are facing as a country. And as today, as Kenya Kwanza, we have marshaled ourselves with a mega plan on how we are going to revive the economy, so that we can be able to actually brought the country in the right path. Because as we are talking today, that's why we're having all these IMF issues that have been raised, is because that we as a country are not moving in the right direction. So it is important that every person in our coalition, we have been able to come up with a major and marshal our mega plan on how we are going to revive the economy. We are talking about agriculture, we are talking about the SMEs, we are talking about housing and settlement, we are talking about health. Okay, these are issues that we have already sat down, and we have already gone around the country, sitting down with different sectors, sitting down with different counties, and we have agreed with them, including signing charters, women charter, youth charter, and all these has been headed towards actively going to revive the economy.
Okay.
Yes.
I wish Ascon Kamili was here, because Ascon, where are you? He is meant to, to come and put up a defense, because Samuel is flooring you in your absence. Do come in. Otherwise, it will be a walkover. Sylvia M. Tunabebwa malenge.
You know, the sad thing, I think, is in our political climate here in Kenya is politicians, from the MCA all the way to the presidential candidate, always tell us what we want to hear. So as Steve has put it, where is the evidence to back up the claim that they're giving us, that, oh, I will build roads, oh, I will do X, Y, Z. We've had that before. We had it in the 2017 election, we had it in the 2013, we had, oh, in the first 100 days, all children will have laptops. But at that point, we know there are people who don't even have a classroom, they don't even have electricity. We've had all these things before, and because there's no evidence, there's no way to be able to realistically follow through on what they're saying, it can't happen. But since, as Kenyans, we're only hearing what we want to hear, we end up going to the poll and voting and not really questioning our leaders as to whether, okay, fine, you've told us that X, Y, Z is going to happen. You've told us that from now on, education will be free from nursery school all the way to university. Where's this money going to come from? If just primary school and high school has been a problem, maybe. You've told us maybe that, oh, we'll now have investments. Right now we are struggling in the economy already. IMF, we have loans from here to God knows where that we still need to pay for. So all these promises you're making, I think it's time that as Kenyans we come down and ask these leaders, okay, very nice plans. They are very flowery. How are they going to happen? How are they realistically going to happen and help us as Kenyans? Because at the end of the day, we'll come back in the next election and say, oh, yeah, they promised, and then there'll be another excuse of, oh, this happened, this didn't happen. But you had that information before you started. So if all our politicians, first of all, if they promise, that's fine. But as Kenyans, before we go to the poll, our question is, how are you going to do it?
Okay. Now, Sylvia K., as you had, Samuel talks a good game. Kidogo aningize box. But he hasn't really addressed the question of Kenya's existing debt burden. They've said, I've heard your party leaders say that we shall stop borrowing, we shall invite Kenya's friends to invest in the country. But there already exists a debt burden. There already exists commitments that have been made to the IMF. Has he addressed that? How they're going to address the existing debt burden? Am I wrong?
I think even before we move to how we'll address it, there are two things to look at here. First is we don't even know how much debt we have. Yes, we know, okay, we know the total amount, we know the debt ceiling has been raised, but in terms of what has actually been promised in exchange for this sort of debt, or what commitments has Kenya given other countries, foreign countries, to be able to get this kind of debt, this information has not been publicly available. And access to information to this sort of information has been difficult to get. And so that should be the first step. We can't question what we don't know. That's number one. And secondly, just to build up on what Sylvia M. has spoken about, I think there has been a trend of not challenging manifestos or promises, if I can say that. And when I say challenging, I mean interrogate. We are interrogating the promises. If, as at in 2022, we would have looked at what your MCA, what your MP promised in 2017 and where we are now, and you ask them, okay, you're coming to ask us for this position, what have you done for us? You said, we're just going to judge on what you told us you'd do, not any extraneous factors, what you told us you're going to do. And you listed A, B, C, but you've done X, Y, Z, and these are our needs. Do you see, is there any congruence? Do you think this is working for us? And on that basis, that's how we judge who we want to elect. So if we develop that culture, and even as early as now, Azimio, Kenya Kwanza, and all these political parties have released, and coalitions have released manifestos, but have we come out to clearly say, just as you're asking, Olive, you know, but as citizen groups and as citizens, we come up and say, okay, you've said this and this, but how do you honestly think this will happen? And how do you think this will be implemented? And on top of that, we've seen, okay, I can say that there has been some improvement. We've seen several resident associations trying to hold social audits, or let me say sort of debates with their MCAs or their MPs at the local level. And I think that's a step forward. But now moving forward in 2027, it's for us to look forward and say, I hope that is ASCON coming in.
It is ASCON. He's wearing a shirt with Raila's face on it. Baba the Fifth. 1 second, ASCON. Just finish, Sylvia.
And so it's for us to even, it's for us to keep them accountable and to say in 2027, now moving forward, and we're going to say, okay, this is what Kenya Kwanza told us, this is what Azimio told us, and whoever it is, whether it's an MP, a senator, a governor, you came on the Kenya Kwanza ticket, you came on the Azimio ticket, what have you promised us this, but have you done this? Once we inculcate that sort of trend and culture amongst ourselves as Kenyans, then we'll probably have easier questions to answer in 2027 as opposed to now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Steve, actually, it's coming to you.
Yeah.
Now that, I mean, their manifestos read at the moment, like the stuff of fiction.
Right.
So, what we trust, what we base our, you know, we have, according to the polls, a substantial number who are undecided.
Right.
So, what should they base their decisions
Right,
on?
and that was going to be actually my thought that I was going to share. I think these top contenders, you know, Ruto and the Honorable Raila, and even others, the likes of Professor Jakoya and the likes, are people who are known to us as a country. They are people who have been in this country serving in one position or the other in the past couple of years, you know. And I think that Kenyans should vote this time based on track record. Look at what these individuals have been able to achieve. They've been public servants at one point or the other, and we have seen what they were able to do when they hold certain public offices. And so based on that, I think we should, as a country, use that as a basis to make a determination when it comes, I mean, during the 9th of August elections. Because I think that as a country where we are hurting. We can never afford continue voting along ethnic lines, you know, or party lines and things like that. We need to really now, for the first time, maybe put our interests at the forefront, you know, and vote for leaders who we think will represent as well, will address the pressing issues that we are facing. You know, the cost of living is very high. The energy, you know, has gone very high. Education is becoming expensive. Health is becoming inaccessible and very expensive. There are people who are dying to date because of diseases such as malaria that can be treated. And so I think we have to make a choice as a country, a choice on whether we want to have Kenya as is, or the Kenya we want, which is a topic that we'll be getting into in a short while.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, Samuel, I'm coming to you. I know, right of reply. But ask on karibu sana.
Asante sana Olu.
Naona huu upande mtu amevaa tai ya yellow.
Of course, I can see Masaki there.
Hapo chama gani unaona tu yellow. And I can see you with your shirt, with the R and Raila Odinga's representation.
In fact, today we have a very big day. We are supposed to launch our the abridged version of our manifesto that represents Raila's vision for the young people of Kenya. Okay. And I think I should invite all of them today between noon and in fact between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. We are expecting to host His Excellency Raila Odinga at the National Archives. So all Kenyans should be tuning in and see what Raila has for the young people.
That's what has you panting, eh? Well, Ascon, welcome to the discussion. And this is a question I had posed to my panelists. And given the IMF restrictions, can we trust all the political promises the two principals from either side have made? And Samuel has told us, nyinyi ndo mlidireli mambo yote with a handshake. What do you have to say to that?
Well, really, first and foremost, let me begin by saying that you know, the basis upon which a voter should trust a political leader is their history. So we most of the time we encourage our supporters and those who we reach out to in all the political events that we go to really put all the political leaders out there and the candidates on a weighing scale and understand them based on their history. Raila Odinga's history is very clear. He has promised before, he has delivered before. On the other hand, we have other candidates, particularly our biggest opponent, that is Honorable William Ruto, and his history. We know that he has made several promises that he has not been able to, you know, actually implement them. So that is the very simple basis upon which we look at our politicians. Just listen to them, listen to what they have promised before. Check if they have delivered on the promises. We promised during the Kibaki government that we would do free primary education. It happened. We promised the new constitution in 2010. It happened. We promised devolution. It happened. We are promising 35% down to the counties. It's going to happen. We are promising free primary education at the primary school level, secondary school level, and university level. Kenyans must trust us. It's going to happen.
Yeah, okay. Samuel, what do you say to that? He says your boss's track record is to distance himself from the failures of the Jubilee administration and associate himself with the successes.
I think if we base ourselves on that, I think he has not done his own research very well, because some of these things they're trying to bring out clearly has already been portrayed in the public. And if we talk about the kazi kwa vijana, which was there in the time of Kibaki, the people who actually made it fail are the same people who are trying to promise. He's inviting us for a show that we are going to see the same thing that happened before. So I think this election is all about the economy. we are not talking about the constitution, constitutionalism and changing the constitution to just accommodate few people. We want to revive the economy so that the country can be back on the track. If we are going to allow ourselves into a position whereby we are going only to protect few people and few individuals to benefit in the system, the way we have said, the way they have always done it through the trickle down, as we are focused on the bottom up, so that the people at the bottom of the pyramid can be able to develop, can be able to access credit and be able to do business so that we can build together, all of us, the economy. That is what we are looking at, and that's what Kenyans want. These all other shenanigans you are seeing around, or we are going to do this, we have a Marshall Plan and a mega plan on how we're going to revive the economy. We have sat down in all the counties, we have sat down with experts on how we are going to approach this issue of debt. That if we can be able to invest properly in agriculture, if we can be able to invest properly in SMEs, we are able to have enough capital, we are able to service our debt, and we can be able to move forward as a country.
Okay.
Yes.
Just before my colleagues go, because I know they're on the neutral position, so I'll be able to look at this from a little better position. You know, the contest now is not on who has a better manifesto. The contest now is not on who has a more colorful and cosmetically appealing manifesto. We have had manifestos before. We have had plans before. We have listened to our leaders talk about their plans and what they wish to do for this country. The issue is on the ability to deliver and the ability to commit to delivering the promises that they give in these manifestos. We have examples of their candidate in the UDA and Kenya Kwanza promising a lot of things. The same thing he's promising now on free internet nationwide. He had promised it in 2013. We have clips going around for the same. He had promised we're going to have stadia across the country. We have them on record. They are not there. He had promised a lot, including this money being given to the SMEs. It is not about the promises. The promises can be given even by Wajakoya. The promises are even being given by the other candidate there. So it's not about the promises for us. It's about the commitment to deliver on the promises that we give. We have given promises before, we have delivered. On another note, we have had them talk about the fact that this country is not into the conversation about the constitution, our history, and such kind of things. We must tell them that, just as is said in other democracies, in America, where they talk about their history so proudly, we must learn to talk about our history with so much pride. We must learn to talk about building the nation and equally building the state. We cannot build the nation and ignore the state. We cannot build the state and ignore the nation. What we are discussing now is on the question of, while we build the nation, we have to ensure that the state is equally up to date. When we talk about the Constitution, we are now talking about devolution that is embedded in the Constitution. How do we talk about devolution without talking about the Constitution? How do you talk about having more funds at the counties without talking about the Constitution? So Kenya Kwanza, in their defeatist and simplistic way of looking at things, views our ideas as though they are too complex. They are not complex. We just want to have every idea grounded on the law, and that when we pursue these ideas, our people can be able to put us to account.
Ascot, my thinking is this. Kenya has some of the best laws, some of the best policies. The problem is that implementation. So we can change the constitution 1,000,001 times, but if the goodwill, the political goodwill is not there to back it, then really how far do we go down that road? But have you met Sylvia M? I know you've sat on the same panel as Sylvia Katua. Have you met Sylvia M?
No wonder I said I know she comes from a neutral position. Because I know she'd give us a more neutral view. But just as you said, you're talking about the political goodwill. I agree with you entirely. The issue in this country has been on the will of our political leaders, the political will, to implement some of these ideas. I was having a conversation with one of the CSIs in government, a very brilliant fellow in the Ministry of, the Treasury, and he was telling me about how Kenya has all the papers needed in the world, all the policy papers. The issue has been how to implement these policy papers. The question again arises, who has the capacity and the political goodwill? We're talking about gender parity. Who has the capacity and the goodwill? Raila Odinga has already shown that he can actually engage women meaningfully. We have other leaders.
Okay, time out. I was introducing you to Sylvia Morabe. She is a programs manager at Crime Sipoa. Sylvia, this is Ascon. Ascon is a part of the presidential campaign secretariat for Raila Odinga, as you can tell from his shirt, and his very passionate defense of Raila Odinga's track record. Sylvia, we're heading into now the presidential debate. That is going to happen on Tuesday. So what I've heard from Steve is that let's judge them on their track record.
Thank you.
Both these gentlemen seem to agree that this election is about the economy, despite the different sides.
Right.
What are some of the issues that you'd like addressed in the course of the debate?
Okay. The very first thing actually I'd like to see, which I've not seen so far, is let's argue more on policies rather than personalities. Because up to this point, I find like most of the arguments that have been coming across is, oh, this person, it's more of a personal attack than it is on what is it that you're bringing to the table. So if we could first put that aside and then now start arguing on the policies that we're each bringing on the table, that would be a good start. As also of the things that we'd want to be able to see covered, okay, fine, we have the track record that we are judging you on. So if we can now have that, I'd like to see a debate where we're very objectively listening, not because we have a preconceived notion of this person would win or this person would lose. For example, for the deputy presidential debate, I would have loved to see all four on the same panel rather than put them aside, because now you've already given us an idea that we don't think these ones would be able to make it, so they're not on the equal footing. But if I like that now at least we're having all of them on the same table, we can be able to question them on the same issues, we can be able to gauge their thinking on where is the economy going. We're having issues. Kenyans are crying. We can't afford basic commodities. Right now, you know, initially you'd have like 1,000 shillings and maybe it could push you for like a week. Now you go into the supermarket, you walk out with 2 things and your 1,000 bob is finished. We want to be able to, I would like to hear from that debate what we are talking about revamping the economy. How are we going to do that so that Kenyans can actually be able to afford the living? How are we going to curb the issue of unemployment? Right now, we've seen that the unemployment rate is gauged at, I think, 6.6%. We have so many people who have gone to school, who have gained the skills, but they can't find a job. They can't be able to find any meaningful employment that they can be able to sustain their lives. How are they going to answer that? We have all these issues of our debt cap keeps increasing. How are we going to have a sustainable economy where we can be able to raise that money and not keep borrowing and keep taxing us more, because we're being taxed. And then the worst part is there's no accountability to that money. If our taxes were going up and then we'd see where our money is going, probably it would be easier on the Kenyans. But now we're not seeing where that money is going into. So the issues of accountability, I'd want people to be able to stand there, own where they have their mistakes, and then give us workable solutions as we go forward.
Okay. I mean, because you're saying they're not telling us how they're going to address the heavy taxation. For instance, huku Kenya Kwanza wanatuambia they'll expand the tax base, which is just more tax, and then ask, and you guys are telling us you'll stem the loss of the 2 billion shillings the president said we lose daily, but you're not telling us how. Sylvia Katua, what do you want to hear in the course of the presidential debate?
I think 3 things. First, on nationhood. Issues to do with our national values and principles under Article 10, issues of public participation, issues to do with our sports. Our athletes are struggling, some of them. What sort of support do we see the next government coming to provide? Thirdly, issues to do with our culture and our language, trying to ensure we protect our heritage as Kenyans. Secondly, on governance. On governance, we can think of this in 2 ways. First, on strong institutions, and secondly, on a conducive environment for good governance. So when we think about strong institutions, of course, I'll definitely focus on Parliament. What is the agenda for the 13th Parliament? What do you think will be the first sort of, what will be the sort of legislation that they seek to pass, you know, in the first, okay, I don't want to say 100 days, but in their tenure, you know, in government? And also the judiciary. We've seen issues before with the judiciary. We want an independent judiciary, and we would want assurances that separation of powers is something that's constitutionally guaranteed, would be
respected.
Yes, respected and upheld all throughout the 5 years. Issues also to do with the counties and resource allocation. We saw before fights. I wouldn't say fights, but the fight that indeed the Senate had in trying to increase resource allocations for the counties, and the 3rd generation revenue formula that actually came to pass to the Senate. But what did the government do? And when I say the government, I especially mean the executive. What sort of leadership did they provide in that situation, especially with regard to allocation of resources? conducive environment, when we think about a conducive environment for good governance, we think about civil societies. Till date, the Public Benefits Organizations Act has not been passed, despite its enactment in 2013. Issues to do with political parties. Last year, we saw the amendments to the Political Parties Act, and now we are seeing coalitions outfits coming out as opposed to small political parties. Then what is the place of small political parties? Their relevance, their popularity is decreasing with time, and yet there are important factors in the political process. And so also these new issues to do with direct nominations, opinion polls, negotiated democracy, and the place of all this, especially for women, young women, youth. So this means that their political participation is moved to the sides. They're not involved at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Also on inclusion, we want youth, we want women, we want young women at the table, not just to be seen, not just about representation, but meaningful participation, that their decisions are taken into account and that they're able to participate in the process. And so we would want to see what the next government has in terms of inclusion and especially public participation. Issues to do with public participation. We've seen calls for public participation, but there's no meaningful feedback mechanism. So you sit down and you write a very nice memorandum, but you don't know where it goes or whether your input was actually put in, and not only just for parliament, but even in the executive, in the type of policies that they come up with. Okay. And lastly, issues to do with the economy. So you think about food security. There's a drought going on currently, and I've not had questions regarding that. Issues to do with safe and adequate water. Issues to do with housing have not come up. We have so many people living in this city especially, but housing is hard to come by. And when I say housing, I mean dignified housing. And lastly, issues to do with technology and climate change. These are emerging issues that are coming up. They have not been addressed. Technology, how best we can be able to harness technology, especially for civic participation. And in terms of climate change, what commitments? Kenya has given very many commitments in the international arena, but how are they being implemented here? And which agencies do we need, or which citizen groups do we need to be able to work with all that? So I think for me, once I see, an overall debate or an all-rounded debate rather that focuses on all these issues, I'd be happier.
Okay, so Smriti Vidiathi, Ken Mijungu, Yvonne Okwara, Eric Latif, Mwakenya Ndoyo. Steve, what do you want to hear?
Right, I think the two Sylvias have really captured nearly everything, but maybe just to top up onto what they have said. I think what I want to see or to hear is how corruption is going to be tackled. I mean, the president said we lose close to 2 billion. I mean, as we are seated here, we are already maybe lost close to half a billion, heading to 2 billion by evening. And that's very, very unfortunate, and we lose close to, a third of our national budget to corruption based on the Auditor General's reports. And so I want to hear how these leaders are going to address this when they take power. We didn't get to hear that in the last debate, the deputy presidential debate. The focus was more on state capture, but it wasn't clear really how either side was going to address that when they take power. But beyond that, I also want to see, how they are going to create sustainable jobs for the young people. Unemployment is a big issue in this country. We have young people being forced to get into crime, not because they want, but because life is becoming very unbearable, And so, how I want to hear. I mean, how are they going to for instance, create an industrialized Kenya? How are they going to create opportunities for young people, to create self-employment for young people? Today, starting a business as a young person is very difficult. There are a lot of taxes that don't favor startups. They say most startups don't go beyond their first birthday because of such unfavorable conditions. But beyond that, I also want to hear really commitment to strengthening democracy in this country. I think it's shrinking. We have made some progress from the Moise regime, 2 decades, but I think that it is shrinking, and we need to see a commitment on how we are going to strengthen democracy and especially make it work for women and the youth of this country. I think we are disadvantaged as it is right now. When it comes to political participation, it's very difficult. We have to, as young people, and I think even women, we have to work at least 10 times harder as the other established political class. And I think those are areas that I want to see, to hear how they are going to address. And of course, the issues around gender equality, it's an important issue, and how the next regime is going to address the issue around debt management. That is a big issue that is crippling the economy of this country. And so, yeah, I think those are really critical aspects.
All right, so we take a break, but when we come back, it appeared that both sides of the political divide, that is those who participated in the second-tier deputy presidential debate, were not quite happy with the conduct. From statements I've read from Dennis Onsarigo and also from Hussein Mohammed. So we'll hear from the two sides on how they want this upcoming one to be different. And then you'll take the stage and present your vision for Kenya, the Kenya we want, on the other side of this break.
The Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, regulates the broadcasting industry, promoting development of local content and ensuring responsible use of broadcasting platforms for national good. The Communications Authority of Kenya, opening your world.
Unapohisi maumivu, unahitaji kitulizo kinachotegemeka. Jaribu Panadol Advance. Ikitumia teknolojia Panadol Optizorb, tembe hiyo hufyonzwa haraka na kuandaa kitulizo cha haraka dhidi ya maumivu. Jaribu Panadol Advance.
I can't live without my phone. It's my life. It is where everything happens. That's why lazima nikuwe available all the time, offline and online. But there are some bad people out here. If you're not careful, utagonga.
The Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, licenses and regulates mobile operators so you can enjoy safe, quality services at fair prices. Register your SIM card by the 15th of October 2022. The Communications Authority of Kenya, opening your world.
Kaunti ya Machakos njaa, wakati kama sasa wamama wanashindana wakikimbiza wanasiasa, anga apate unga mfuko moja.
I know the politicians are giving us some tokens. Let us be wise. Eat whatever we are given, but look at the person we are voting for.
Aki Machakos tunalia kabisa. Kanjo ya huko inatulisha kabisa.
Governors wengi ambao walirudi term zao za pili hawajafanya kazi yoyote, na chenye kilikuwa kinaendelea katika kaunti ambazo zilikuwa na magavana ambao walirudi ilikuwa ni wizi.
Kura sisi tutapiga kulingana na mtu binafsi. Hatuwezi kupiga kulingana na vyama.
Hii ni kipindi nzuri ambao mmeleta with the people. Ningeongezea neno moja la Kiswahili iwe sisi wananchi ndio wenye nchi. Asante.
Wananchi ndio wenye nchi.
Sakaja ni jina lako halisi.
Nafikiri mlialika Sakaja. Jina lako ni Zubeida.
Now well, on this one I will stand with Zubeida mazi. Ini Nairobi unaweza fikiri unajua mtu kumbe umjui. I think Zubeida aliuliza swali ya mtaani. Buda ni wewe. Ni kama kupatana na pastor wenu kwa club. Ama uingie heaven ukutane na Huda.
To summarize what you have said, debt is here to stay. So in short, debt is oxygen.
Not really oxygen. Money is next to oxygen.
Can you live without debt?
Yes, you
totally
can.
debt free.
Yes, you can.
Life is for the living. Make sure you live it well. Life is for the living and making sure that those who we love will be well taken care of.
Welcome back to AM Live, and we're discussing the Kenya we want, and that is the youth perspective, ably represented on my panel this morning. So before we launch into the Kenya we want, everybody has 5 minutes. Quickly, let's hear from you, Samuel, on the presidential debate. Your side said they wanted to be issue-based. What is that premised on?
We are very clear. We don't want the debate to be personalized. We want to talk about the issue. We want to talk about, dissect about our manifesto. Some of the things that we want to hear more of agriculture, the cost of living, the economy. We want to hear more of the youth unemployment. How is it going to be sorted out? These are some of the things that are already been captured in our manifesto. So basically, what my three colleagues have already said is just to hear more of how the young people are going to be involved in the state of democracy of our country, and also how we can be able to move our country from the level that we are today into another level that can be able to have more of growth as a country. We can be able to service our debt. We can be able to grow economically. That's some of the things that we really want to hear. And we want, like we said yesterday, let everything be outlined, let each and every aspect that is going to be discussed be outlined, and the time that is going to be allocated to each and every candidate, so that our position and communication and all our candidates can be able to have enough time to explain to Kenyans on how this major plan on how we are going to revive the economy of this country.
Okay.
Yes.
I meant Dennis Onyango, not Onsarigo. Right. He tweeted, a failed debate, a waste of precious candidate time. Media Council of Kenya, very shoddy, very showbiz, very lacking in substance. If this is it, don't be too sure. And he went on to say, UDA position is that they wouldn't participate because media are biased. Why did Rigathi show up? Was this part of the culture of deceit and lies of William Ruto? Has nobody asked this question? Media Council of Kenya, how deep is this conspiracy in Media Council of Kenya?
I think I agree with Dennis Onyango almost entirely, because part of the issues, or some of the issues that he's raising, are very pertinent, particularly in a debate that really needs to help Kenyans make a decision on who is supposed to lead them going forward. We have the question of the Nairobi gubernatorial candidate for UDA coming late to the debate. I think nobody put him to task to apologize for that, because really these are some of the things that go down to the culture and the values of Kenyans, just as was being mentioned by Sylvia right here. We had Mr. Rigathi Gachagua tell us that he would not come for the debate. Nobody put him to task to explain why he's presented himself there, even having reservations on the conduct of the moderators before that debate. So we want to speak to the real issues, yes. We want our candidates to be given a chance to speak to the real issues without going into trivialities, taking so much time on non-issues. But if we're going to talk about corruption, we have to give time to that corruption and discuss it, delve deep into the real issues, ask the tough questions. If you're going to ask William Ruto how the Langata primary case happened, we have to go deep into the questions. We asked Gachagua about his 12.5 billion. He scattered around it by mentioning some 200 million moving between accounts. Who put him to task to explain how this happened? Who put him to task to explain that the court papers read 12.5 billion and not the 200 million that he was talking about? So these are some of the issues we are demanding from the moderators of this debate. And I want to believe that Eric Latif and his colleagues are going to do a better job when Raila Odinga and William Ruto will present themselves before them. They have to explain to us what is the agenda of Raila Odinga? Give him time to explain what is his agenda. What is the agenda of William Ruto concerning the young people of this country? Give him time to explain this, but don't go into the trivialities. Don't go into the non-issues and taking too much time. We discussed Sakaja's degree papers, which are very clear and which needed to be investigated within over 1 minute. Over 30 minutes of the debate, and if the debate has been scheduled for 1 hour, 30 minutes, if we spend 30 minutes on non-issues, I think we get to lose Kenyans big time. I know they want to, our media to an extent, which is not really, bashing them, but our media thrives on sensationalism. What would sell out there in the newspapers the following day? What would be big on the headlines? That is not what we want at this stage. What we want to hear is Baba Raila Odinga talks about 6,000 shillings. How is he going to achieve this? We are talking about free primary education. We have had issues with our taxes. We've had issues with our economy. How are they going to handle these issues? And we are very sure that our candidate, if given a chance, will be able to explain to Kenyans without any hesitation the manner in which he wishes to address the plight of every part of our society, the women, the youth, and even the older generation.
All right, Smriti, Eric, Yvonne, Ken Mijungu, the pressure is on. On to the Kenya we want. Next time, I will have a podium. But for today, I'll allow you to keep your seat and proceed with your presentation on the Kenya we want. Do you mind if I adjust the time slightly, given how much time we've taken on the discussion so far? Can we make it 3 minutes each? Fantastic. All right, so 1 quick second. Let me just trace my timer. All right. Steve, are you good to go?
Great, and this is the Kenya we want is a topic that is very close to my heart, and I'm sure to the hearts of all of us here and millions of Kenyans who are watching this morning. And it's because for a very long time we have experienced a Kenya that doesn't work for most of Kenyans, only work for those at the top. And I think that this is a defining moment in the history of this country where we are confronted with two fundamental choices: to have Kenya as we know it, or to, vote for a Kenya that we want, a Kenya that represents our aspirations and our hope, a Kenya that works for all of us. The Kenya as we know it, as has been said here, is characterized by corruption. Like I said, we lose, based on President's admission, we lose 2 billion every day. We lose more than a quarter of our budget to corruption. When it comes to health, it doesn't work for the poor people. There are people who are still dying because of diseases that can be treated. And that is very unfortunate. When it comes to issues around, agriculture, which is the bedrock of this country's economy, grossly underfunded, very, very insignificant attention paid to smallholder farmers who are struggling. So it doesn't seem to work. And of course, the cases of unemployment is on the rise. Kenya is a youthful population. As young people, we account to about 74% of this country population, and about 40% thereabout of us are unemployed. So we are struggling as a youth of this country. And I think issues around democracy, our democratic space is shrinking. It doesn't seem to work for the young people and the women, of this country. Only works for the rich and the well-established political class, and that's very unfortunate. So for me, I think moving into the future and hopefully beyond August 9th, I want to see a Kenya that is corrupt-free, a Kenya where people who we elect and who get involved in corruption are held into account, are prosecuted, and money recovered and used to develop, improve the livelihoods of Kenyans. I want to see a health system that works for everybody, not just the rich and not just the working class or the middle class. I also want to see a Kenya where democracy thrives and works, for young people and women of this country. I want to see a Kenya where, where agriculture is supported, because that is the bedrock of this country, this country's economy, accounting for close to 25% GDP of this country. And I think those are really fundamental areas that we need to see that will define the future of this country. And I think based on these aspirations and this hope that we have for this country, my appeal to the citizenry of this country is to vote for leaders based on their track record. Like I said, we know them. They've been in the public service for the longest. And so let us look at their history. And based on that, let us elect leaders based on track record. And this time, at least for the first time, let us not elect leaders because they come from our tribes, because we have seen that doesn't work. And so let us base with our brain, so to speak, and not our stomach and not our ethnicity, as it has been the case. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. Steve has set the bar quite high in the interest of gender balance. Sylvia M.
Thank you. And I want to start maybe from where Steve has stopped. That yes, I too want a corruption-free country, a corruption-free Kenya. And the Kenya that I want is a Kenya where we have strong governance structures that call for accountability, that we are able to hold our leaders accountable to what they promise that they will do and to just doing their job as is in their JD. That we are able to come in and say, okay, you have done what you did, fine, you can stay. You have gone contrary to what your JD describes, and thus as the voting community, we have the power to be able to get you out of that post and put someone else who would actually do the job that we need them to do. I'd like to see a Kenya where we have that accountability. I'd like to see a Kenya where we have equal access to services and opportunities. We have seen instances where the ballot boxes can get to the remotest part of this country, but basic needs like water, electricity, education, health services cannot reach back there in the village. One of my friends is telling me they're in the village, and yes, they have electricity, but the rest of the village are still using either solar panels or, the koroboi, which our grandparents used back in the day. We're in the 21st century. That isn't something that should be happening right now. So that as we are seeking to develop the country, that we are able to devolve all those services to the remotest of remote parts of this country, and that all Kenyans can be able to access equal opportunities to services and school and everything like that. I would like to see a Kenya where the unemployment rate is reduced. That as youth, we can be able to be assured that as I go to school or as I seek to either build a business or I seek to build a career, that I will have that opportunity. That it will not be about who I know, but what I know and what I bring to the table. Right now, there's so many people who are not able to get any opportunities. We have had people who have become career interns because that's the only opportunity you can get. You can't get any good paying job to be able to sustain yourself. So I'd want to see a Kenya where we can all have jobs, where we can be employed and we can be able to sustain ourselves. I'd want to see a Kenya where we're all included, where our voice matters, that as youth especially, that we have an equal chance at the table, not just at the table to be for cosmetic purposes, but to give our input in what matters, that our voice will not just be there for them to say, okay, we've ticked a box, we have a third, or we have youth representation, but we have a chance to lead. We've always been told the youth are the leaders of tomorrow, youth are the leaders of tomorrow. I think that tomorrow is today. It's about time that we are given an opportunity to be able to come in, be able to voice our issues and be able to give solutions as to how we can have them answered. And even just for our communities, we have public participation, which is supposed to be something that helps us to be able to own the process of the laws and the policies that govern us in this country. If we can all be able to put in, then we own the process and know that the policies that are put there are policies that are there to help us. We have a transparent process, and at the end of the day, political goodwill. Goodwill that will ensure all the laws and the policies that we have put in place to be able to help us as Kenyans are actually being implemented. It's not just good on paper, but it's working. And another thing, just a Kenya where we can all afford to live decently. We don't all need to own 200 billion, but a Kenya where we can all live decently. I can be able to afford a meal. I can be able to afford basic healthcare, basic needs. And finally, a Kenya where we are empowered. A Kenya where we stop now, as Steve put it, we're not looking into, are you from my tribe? Are you from my area? And that's the only reason we'll vote for you. But a Kenya where we are able to hold our leaders to the same standards you would hold an employee when you want to hire someone for a job. That we are able to be more demanding and be more pragmatic about the leaders that we choose, so that we can be able to build and grow this nation into one that is inclusive, one that is where we will no longer be hatutakuwa tunavumilia kwa Wakenya. We'll actually jivunia kuwa Wakenya.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Sylvia M. Sylvia K., are you ready to go next?
Yes. Yes.
Go ahead.
I think for me, it's just a Kenya that upholds the Constitution of Kenya. Once we're able to uphold that in all aspects, in all regards, then we're able to move forward and get the Kenya that we want, because all these things that we're talking about are enshrined in the Constitution. So maybe just briefly to just run through what I think we would want, would be, again, going back to the issue of good governance. Globally, we've seen the decline of democracy and shrinking democratic spaces. So it would be important to see more vibrant political parties, as I mentioned before, issues to do with protection of civic spaces, ensuring that civil society is protected and that there are spaces for civil society and even citizens just generally to thrive and exercise their rights. Issues to do with protection of human rights, as enshrined in the Constitution. Would want to see prompt investigations into human rights violations, and we would want to see the end conclusions, so judgments and the entire judicial process. And we actually welcome the judgment of the judgment coming this week or next week on Willy Kimani. Today, yes. So we welcome that. It's taken a bit of time, but we are glad to be able to see that. Also issues to do with revival of caucuses, student caucuses. We've seen a decline of student organizations, youth-led organizations, especially in the universities, which have played a very pivotal role, especially in the attainment of democracy in 1992, post-1992 in this country. Issues to do with trade unions, revival of trade unions, and also professional organizations, so like for the medics, for the lawyers, just to ensure that they are sustained, there's sustained engagement with them, between them and the state. And all this is not to say that the entire burden is on the state. Even the citizens have responsibilities that they need to fulfill. So it goes both ways. It's a two-way sort of engagement. If you also think about institutions, as I spoke about before, independent judiciary, we'd want to see an independent judiciary. We'd want to see an executive that plays its role, but that does not interfere with the other arms of government. So separation of powers would be very key in this sort of Kenya that we would want to see. And issues to do also with inclusion, as has been mentioned before, inclusion of youth, inclusion of young women, which you'll continually see as I deliberately set aside. I don't just say youth and women, I say young women because they're also a marginalized group by themselves. And issues also to do with persons with disabilities. And remember, like I said, it's not just about having them at the table, but it's also having their input in these decision-making processes. So it would be good to see that. And to also ensure that we have proper legislative and regulatory frameworks to ensure this. The two-thirds gender rule has not yet been implemented till date, despite the enactment of the Constitution in 2010 till date. There have been various bills on the floor of the House, but it has kept falling short. So we would want to see this enacted through law, especially, and through regulatory frameworks. Also thinking about the campaign financing regulations that would provide an equal footing for all candidates, whether it's male, female, so that we would ensure that all persons, especially youth who have little to no access to sizable resources like their counterparts who are seasoned politicians, they would be able to have an equal access to the playing field in political processes. Lastly, issues to do with accountability and transparency. Entrenchment of Chapter 6 principles, especially in public service, for state officials, for public officials. Would want to see this going forward, that the leaders we hold we have in office, we can hold them accountable, that they follow the principles of Chapter 6, and even as they conduct their duties, they respect Kenyans and they respect the Constitution. And once we have this, we'll be able to see the Kenya that we want. That's what I have briefly.
All right, thank you very much, Sylvia K. Brilliant so far, I think. In my estimation, gentlemen, who goes first? I'll allow you to decide between yourselves.
I can go first.
All right, okay.
You'll go first?
Masaki says, but I could.
Okay, go ahead, Aston.
Thank you very much. My name is Aston Kamili, and I want to take this opportunity to encourage the young people of Kenya that each and every 5 years we get an opportunity, or an opportunity presents itself for us to make a decision on who runs this country. Well, it's only in Kenya where we would be warm to interview our doctors. We'd be warm to interview our teachers. We'd be warm to interview even our house managers. But we are never warm to interview our presidential candidates or our leaders, those who are charged with the responsibility to ensure that our lives are properly run. An opportunity has presented itself for us to interview them on the presidential debate and equally at the ballot. Interview your leaders and get to understand who is meant to, or who is going to get a chance to run the affairs of your country. Secondly, I have taken a conscious position alongside many young Kenyans to support the candidature of Raila Amolo Odinga because I think Raila Amolo Odinga presents the future of this country or represents the future of this country. And that is for very clear and fundamental reasons that sit at the base of my heart. Among them include, one, Raila Amolo Odinga has talked about the 6,000 Kenya shillings that he wishes to disburse to families that are vulnerable. It is against the background that really we have a country where we need to ensure an austerity measure or to ensure a stopgap measure to cushion many other families in this country that are not able to sustain the high cost of living. As a stopgap measure, Raila Odinga promises 6,000 monthly to the data that we have of the families that are very vulnerable. Secondly, Raila Odinga talks about free primary education, free secondary education, and free tertiary and institutions of higher learning. And that is against the background that we understand that education is the biggest equalizer. Each and every Kenyan should get a chance to be educated properly and to be educated fairly. Not because they have the money to do it, but because the government understands that our constitution provides that education is a basic right. Thirdly, Raila Odinga talks about the mental health issues. As a former student leader, I understand that among the several areas that cause mental health issues is the question of disciplinary cases in universities and our institutions of higher learning. Raila Odinga promises that in under 100 days, there are going to be unconditional reinstatement of all students in all our institutions of higher learning who are suspended or expelled on whatever grounds, academic or political. Fourth, Raila Odinga talks about the question of understanding that our country is buckled under the weight of unemployment. We have a country where so many young people are not employed. How will we get this sorted out? We have to impart skills of the young people. We have to ensure that they have technical skills. How do you do this? Implement Ujuzi Teke Teke. Ujuzi Teke Teke is a mechanism in which all our young people will be able to get skills in our tertiary institutions available and TVETs around them so that they are able to get their skills and use their skills to earn a living. Finally, Raila Odinga talks about giving a chance to the young people of this country to be in charge of their future. He promises that he's going to have a ministry of youth, where youth in this country is going to lead that ministry and to ensure that the issues of the youth are mainstreamed. He's going to have young people, as he has shown before, part and parcel of his government to steer this government. We are going to have 4 cabinet secretaries who are young people. It is the time for the young people to understand that their future and their fate is in their own hands. They must take a conscious position to support Raila Amolo Odinga. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Askan, Samuel, the floor is now yours.
The Kenya we want is the Kenya that every person has the right to thrive in business, to proper live and do business. The Kenya we want, as Kenya Kwanza, we have presented ourselves through our presidential candidate, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, that we want to live in a country where we are free from state capture, where people can be able to do business without having a godfather in the government. We want a country whereby we are free from debt, okay? That is the country that Kenyans all across the entire nation are looking forward. We want a country where we can be able to live in whichever part of this country without feeling threatened by any circumstance of any community that will be attacked or being or your constitutional right or Bill of Rights will be infringed. We want a country where we can be able to have independence of institutions, whereby as much as we have the interdependence of state institution, we want independence of this institution. We don't want the executive to exert its powers to this institution, so that we can be able to have a controlled way of handling issues in this country. Also, one of the things that we can be able to see as young people, we want a country whereby opportunities for young people can be able to present itself. We have talked about having a youth ministry in Kenya Kwanza. This is some of the things that we have already highlighted in our manifesto. So as we are going forward into this presidential debate, I want all of us as Kenyans to be able to come out clearly and be able to channel even our questions to a presidential candidate, so that we can be able to see, do they have a grasp of what they're talking about? Do they have the know-how on how they're going to resuscitate the economy? Do they understand the issues that affect the common person in the ground, the mama mboga, the boda boda? How are they going to sort out all these issues so that we can be able to have a proper and resuscitate our economy? We also have to talk about the issue of corruption. And when we're handling the issue of corruption, let us all be objective. There are issues that we have tried to push on our side in the recent years in terms of how do we operationalize the judiciary fund so that the judiciary can be able to operate without seeking mandate from the executive, so without seeking mandate from parliament, so that they can be able to do their own issues and be able to control without fear or favor from anyone. We're also talking about the issues of economy. The economy, we have already laid out a plan. When you talk about agriculture, these things have already been outlined in our manifesto, and we have made commitment as Kenya Kwanza with the different sectors that are related to agriculture. When today we are talking about the price of unga, we can be able to talk about the price stabilization scheme. This can be able to assist us Kenyans. We cannot be able to suffer during these hard times as Kenyans. These are some of the issues. How do we be able to have the government assisting in farm inputs so that the farmers can be able to grow produce that can be able to assist them, can be able to thrive with the economy, they can be able to sell even outside. Because as we speak today, we have production of crops that can be able to exported, and what we are importing as a country actually compared to what we are exporting is actually the same in terms of the value. So we need to have proper legislative measures which we have already outlined in our manifesto on how we are going to handle these things. So those are some of the things that I've been able to look into. And as a country, I think it is a moment also we have to respect the rule of law and also democracy. We have moved as a country from democratic right into personal rule, whereby people want to control how people are going to vote. People want to control how we are going to elect our leaders. They have not relinquished that powers as stipulated in the Constitution to the people so that we can be able to move forward as a country. If we allow these people to continue, I'm telling you, in the next 20, 30 years, we are still going to be in the same place. We have to respect the Constitution. We have to allow the independence of the institution to do their work. Let the IEBC be allowed to do its own work. We don't want the interference of IEBC by the state. The Constitution has made very clear pronouncements in regards to the mandate of the IEBC. Let that be followed. We have talked also about the issue of allowing the people who are in government not to be able to do business with government. Today we are seeing that in the form of state capture. If that is not captured well, if we are not going to allow the institution to fight corruption, not to be weaponized against ally and protecting and aiding those people who are close to the state, we are not going to move forward as a country. So I'm asking the people of Kenya, I'm asking all the citizens, the young people, let's marshal up and come out in August and vote for Kenya Kwanza so that we can have a proper government that respects rule of law and that can be able to resuscitate the economy.
All right. So thank you, Samuel. Thank you very much to all my panelists this morning.
Something that is quite
I am closing.
No, you know, I don't understand why we didn't touch on this, and it's a very integral thing.
Yes, we did.
We did.
You did?
We did.
It's only because I came in late. But he has touched on it, pointing that IBC should not be interfered with. I think we should read this paper and know that we have a country to watch.
All right, let's cap off the comments at that point in the interest of time. But I do want to apologize to our callers. Unfortunately, we were not able to take your calls this morning, but my track record speaks for itself. I always welcome your engagement. My track record speaks for itself. Well, I've been your host, Olive Burrows. Ask on Kamili, as your presidential campaign secretary at Karibu Sana. Thank you for coming. Always welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you, Sylvia Katua, Mzalendo Trust. Always a pleasure to hear your views on these issues. Beneficial, usually. Your track record speaks for itself. Yeah. Sylvia Marobe, who is programs manager at programs manager at Crime Sipoa. Thank you very much for your contributions. Also very valuable. Samuel Masaki, thank you. Youth for Kenya Kwanza.
Yes.
Chairperson.
Yes.
Coordinator, right?
Yes.
Is it chairperson or coordinator?
Coordinator.
Coordinator.
Yes.
Shukran for coming through this morning. And Steve Ogutu, finally, communication and development expert, specialist. I mentioned you last, but you did go fast with the Kenya you want. So those who are the fast, and anyway, fair chance to everyone.
It's a pleasure to
be here.
Thank
you for watching. That concludes AM Live this morning. I believe your world is coming up next. Do stay tuned.